Okay. Welcome everybody to this event. Author Speaks. This is the second time we are organizing this event. The aim of this event is to encourage students to read more books. Okay, books are the best friend of men. Okay, more you read, more wiser you become. That's the reason we are organizing this session. Today we are having Miss Hemani Malhotra. Before starting the session, I would like to welcome our principal ma'am, Dr. Jagmeet Madan. Then we have got our college IQAC chairperson, Dr. Mighty Madam, Dr. Miss Vidya Madam. Okay. And Vaidya sir is there, who is behind the organizing this event. And yes, I would also like to welcome our speaker today. You all know her. You have been all seeing her, Miss Hemani Malhotra. So let me briefly introduce her. Okay. So Hemani Malhotra has been associated with this college for 23 years professionally as a teacher, but she has studied in the same college. She had done her MSc right down over there in the basement. She had done her MSc over there. So there is a long association of Hemani Madam to this college. She is currently head of RM department. She is taking care of the responsibility of head. She has written 2 books. The first book is Introduction to Consumer Studies, then another book is Resource Management Theory. Okay. She is also in the process of doing her PhD. She has already submitted her PhD and soon she will be completing her PhD in ergonomics. Okay. She is actively involved in designing and implementation of master's program in entrepreneurship and management of business development. Then she is a member of Board of Studies of Home Science Association of India, EIT and Alumni Association. She is in charge of college website. She is also recipient of a research grant for a minor research project which she has received. She is the chairperson of Criteria 7 of AQR committee on which she works for NAC, and there are a lot of things which she does. She is extremely busy. You will always see her running around, and she is one of the major pillars of this college. So I can just go on and on because I have been working with her with Criteria 7 and always we interact. There are a lot of things she has been contributing. So I will wind up my my introduction, and I think I will hand it over to her to continue.
Thank you, Dr. Rohit, and very good afternoon, ma'am, and thank you, Rohit, for this very humble introduction. And at the onset, I wish to express my gratitude to the IQAC team and the library committee for taking me down the memory lane and also providing this opportunity where I can stand before you again and talk about my views and ideas about the book on consumer studies. I have been teaching this group, and but I take the personal finance element. Consumer studies is taken by another teacher, so I think it is a great opportunity where I can talk about the consumer element because I don't teach you that part. I hope you have a session which would be enriching. I started my professional career way back in 1999, and around 2002, the university was due for its syllabus upgradation. And at that time, the UGC made it mandatory to introduce 2 subjects as compulsory subjects to be taught to all students across specializations. And those subjects were environment studies and consumers. And today, almost after 2 decades, this subject has sustained its relevance, and we still opt this subject as a core subject to the first year students, that is, you guys, and it is also offered as a elective subject to the students of other specializations. So this subject definitely has some kind of significance and relevance even in today's life. Way back when I started teaching the subject, obviously it was a new subject, so as the protocol says, the teacher itself, she or he needs to understand what the subject is, and I was extensively reading about consumer and related concepts, and I realized that there were a lot of books, there were a lot of authors who had written a lot about consumers, but we did not have a single book which could cover a lot of aspects together, which could be a hands-on book for students. And I realized that I also started getting fascinated by the subject, and the subject today also is very close to my heart. And that was the time when I felt that, let me just kind of pen down my ideas, consolidate my opinion and my concepts, and then come up with a book. And way back in 2000, students used to go to library and read books, and that the coexistence was there between reading books in the library and internet learning. Unlike today, when students are told the easiest mantra is Wikipedia. So there always is a need for some good books where the students can use them as some reference material, and that just motivated me to kind of consolidate my views on this subject, and that's how I penned down my concepts and then came up with this book way back in 2005. And with all humility, I also wish to share that this book was very, very strongly endorsed by my then principal, Dr. S. Kumukavali, who had also written the foreword for the book, and I'm also proud to say that this book is still used as a reference book across affiliated colleges of Facility Women's University. Almost 80 to 90% colleges are still using this book as reference material. So it makes me, give that sense of pride that this book is used by students. Let me set the context of this subject. What is consumer studies? So consumer studies is studying the consumer interaction with his environment to satisfy one, his basic needs, that is food, clothing and shelter, and also allied needs which are required for healthy living, sustenance and living a complete life. Now that gets us to a point that who is a consumer? We all are consumers because we all make purchases at some point of time. So consumer, we can say, is the final buyer of a product. This product could be a commodity, it could be a good, or it could even be a service. So anything that a person buys to become a consumer. Now, going back to the pre-industrial era, things were very, very simple. We had barter system. What was barter system? Barter system was exchange of goods. If I had an X product and someone else had a Y product, we simply exchanged products and commodities, and life was very simple. But with the advent of globalization, industrialization, mass production, things changed. The entire scenario of market changed. Products that were offered for sale changed. The business approach to the entire concept of market changed. Okay. A lot of things became complicated, and many people started manufacturing similar kind of products. So what happened was, initially we had monopolistic power for so many products, but with mass production, with competition, similar kind of products were manufactured by various organizations. We still have a lot of competition. I mean, just to cite a few examples, we have a lot of national and international markets where you have competing products. Just to name a few, Pepsi and Coke, you have McDonald's and Burger King, you have Nestle and you have Cadbury's, you have Zomato and you have Swiggy. So we still have competition, and each business, based on the kind of ethics they follow, they either follow an ethical method or an unethical method to sustain the market. So with diversification happening, a lot of competition happened, okay, and businesses started adopting various malpractices, which set the content of my first chapter, where I've spoken about the entire evolution of consumers and the different kinds of malpractices at different levels which are experienced by consumers. To name a few: faulty weights and measurements, adulteration, sales gimmicks, misleading advertisements. As consumers, you may or may not be aware, but I'm sure when you learn this subject, you definitely get sensitized to what are the things that are happening around you. And I think that is the prime purpose of still teaching this subject to this generation. Coming to the next chapter, the role of consumer is very important in an economic system. The entire economy works around production, supply, distribution of different goods. And this entire economic system keeps consumers in the center. It means if you do not have a consumer, the entire economy collapses. When the economy collapses, there is no income generation. So it became very essential that business understand that consumers are at the apex of all economy, and they need to create the demand. They need to increase the demand for consumers. And it's very rightly said by Professor Marshall, who says that demand is the only factor that controls the market. Today also, the entire economy revolves around consumer demands. And to assist this, a lot of consumer guides were started and they were getting practiced by business. Some of the consumer guides are standardization of products, grading of products, correct advertisements, coming to packaging, labeling, and all this makes the product a little more expensive. But at least it gives that kind of assurance to the consumer that when they are paying a little extra for these products, they have these guidelines. They are willing to pay that extra with an assurance that they are getting the right product and they are not getting cheated. So this formed the base of my second chapter, where I spoke about different consumer guides. Moving on to the next chapter, where with the passing of time, consumers became more empowered. Today we say that consumer is the king of the market. The entire process of market revolves around the consumer. So understanding consumer behavior was very important for any kind of business. By understanding what a consumer behavior is, the business can decide what are the factors which lead to decision making by consumers. And this formed the base of my next chapter, that how does consumer decision making process affect businesses. We also covered topics like buymanship. What are the ingredients of good buymanship? We talk about consumers being exploited, but we also need to understand that as a consumer, how do you make wise choices so that you don't let people exploit you or let people take you for granted. So good buymanship became an integral part of this textbook or reference book or this book, which taught the consumers that when you talk about malpractices, self-awareness and good buymanship also is equally important. Moving on to consumer education. Consumer education helps develop critical thinking and it creates awareness among consumers so that they become more prudent and more proactive. Consumer education is very important for consumers because it helps you to sustain the ever dynamic and complicated market. Today, when you learn consumer studies, I'm sure there are times when you are asked that did you know this before you did this, and many times the answer comes no, that we were not aware about this before we learned this subject. So consumer education enhances the confidence of a consumer that he or she will definitely not be exploited under any situation, though people come up with different ways of manipulating consumers. Coming to consumer education, how did it start? A very brief introduction. Ralph Nader was the one who started the consumer movement in the US. He is known as the father of modern consumer movement. he wrote a book, or he authored a book which by the title Unsafe at Any Speed, which was a strong humor to the automobile industry. And this was the beginning of consumer movement in the US, which was very, very momentous. At around the same time in Mumbai and then called Bombay, 9 homemakers came together and formed an organization or association, and they named it as CGSI, Consumer Guidance Society of India, which still stands strong and it fights and works for consumer rights. That organization was started with 9 homemakers, and now it has expanded into a big organization which still stands strong and fights for consumer rights. So the entire consumer movement revolved around the concept that consumers need to be safe, but at the same time they need to be sensitized that there are certain rights that we all have as consumers. And on this note, I would just like to read a few lines from my book which talks about consumer rights. Consumer rights was given on March 15, 1963 by the late President John F. Kennedy, and he had announced 4 basic rights of consumers which were accepted globally without irrespective of class, creed, religion, race. An entire nation accepted these 4 consumer rights, and these consumer rights are right to information, right to choose, right to safety, and right to be heard. Now what happens is, because there are variety of products, it is one of the essential consumer rights that a salesperson or a business cannot entrust a product or commodity on a consumer. A consumer has a right to gain information about the product and then discreetly make a choice whether he or she likes to or wishes to buy the product or not. And to enforce these rights, a lot of acts have been implemented. For example, a law or act of the Safe Packaging and Labeling Act. This act says that any product which has a label should give correct information about the product. In case of failure, it is a punishable crime. So there were 4 rights that were accepted globally, and later, after a couple of years, 4 more rights were added to it. These rights were right to healthy environment, right to consumer education, right to redressal, and right to basic needs. If you are complaining as a consumer, the process doesn't get over there. It is very essential that when you complain, you need a solution for your problem. And that was again very important, and that's the reason why right to redressal was added on to the 4 basic rights later, because just complaining would not solve a purpose. You need to get some kind of solution for the problems that you had. So these are the 8 basic rights, and I think as consumers, irrespective of class, creed, age, we need to remember these 4, the 8 consumer rights. Coming to the next chapter, consumer protection is very, very important, because you need to be safe from any kind of deceptive or fraudulent malpractices that are happening around you. And consumer protection can happen at a 4-tier level. First, where the business decides to self-regulate themselves. If the business are self-disciplined, they realize that this kind of malpractice should not be followed. I think the entire level of consumer protection will not be existed if the business gets self-regulated. The second tier is the different laws that the legislation offers. There are different laws that are available for consumer protection. Some to name a few important laws: Consumer Protection Act of 1986, and there have been amendments made to this act, and the last amendment was made in 2021. So that is a very, very important law which caters to majority of the malpractices that are happening on consumers in society. So COPRA Act is called as Consumer Protection Act. You have Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices, that is MRTP Act. You have PFA, that is Prevention of Food Adulteration Act. So you have a number of acts available in the legislation to to avail of in case there is any kind of malpractice happening to you or around you. The third tier is you have different organizations, NGOs working for consumer protection. I did mention about Consumer Guidance Society of India. There are other organizations who are working for this cause. We have CFPP, that is Council for Fair Business Practices, and we have a setup just 2 buildings across in the same campus. We also have CERC, that is Consumer Education Research Center, which is in Ahmedabad, and we have many more. So one can reach out to an organization in case they need help. And the last and the most important thing is consumer themselves. Irrespective of the infrastructure given to consumers to protect themselves, until and unless the consumer himself or herself is not sensitized and does not become an alert consumer, irrespective of all the things that are available to a consumer, no change can happen. So it is very essential that the consumer should be aware, and they say that self-help is the best help. So consumers should be sensitized and should be cautious when they are making any kind of purchase. So this was a kind of summary of the concepts that were included in this book, and I would like to conclude saying that as consumers we can bring a big change just by monitoring the way we make a purchase. Today also, with the advent of technology, with modernization, a lot of things have improved, but as we move on, there are different things that keep coming up. Technological advancement has led to a lot of online frauds. You've heard about so many things that happen with your bank accounts, okay? So this can only be curbed if you as a consumer are sensitized and prudent in making the right kind of choice. So with this, I would like to conclude, and I hope I could instill some kind of enthusiasm and motivation to read the book and also to read more about this topic, because this has no gender and age bar. Anybody from a small child to an elderly person can read about consumers, because finally we all are consumers, and every drop in the ocean matters. Every single person, once they become sensitized, they become aware, can bring about a big change in the entire setup. So thank you for your patient hearing. I am also open to any questions, or anybody wants to ask something. Yes, because I did mention that consumers, the entire market scenario will never change. You have people who are into business. Business works on profit making. Many business work on ethical grounds, but there are some who definitely follow malpractices. So with changing times, we still need consumer protection. To cite an example, I will not name the name of the shop because it's in Santa Cruz, so I don't feel it ethical to name the shop in the public domain. Last week I went to pick up some snacks from that shop, and you get an auto-generated bill. So what happens is, because it's auto-generated, I always assume that there will never be a calculation error because it's a computerized bill. And I just happened to see the bill because I thought that the kind of money I have paid and the things I have purchased, I somehow found that there was some mismatch. And when I actually calculated, there was a difference of 1,000 rupees in the bill. So 1,000 rupees extra was charged, and I am going to go back to that place and definitely question the shop owner for what has happened. So yes, with the advent of technology, with industrialization, globalization, still we have a lot of malpractices happening around us which we may or may not be aware of. Sorry? Okay. In case you feel that you have experience of fraudulent malpractice, you need to write a mail to a consumer organization. They will get back to you and they will ask you to provide full details about what was the malpractice. They will then approach the person concerned and they will ask for a redressal. In case of denial, then the consumer organization takes both the parties to the court, because any kind of malpractice is a punishable crime, and that's how the redressal process it ends up or shapes up. There are a lot of NGOs. These organizations that I mentioned is a non-government, non-profit organization. So the basic fees that you require would be for putting a case is required, otherwise it's not an expensive affair. Just that, ironically, it takes time to, for the thing to get sorted.
How many of you read the label when you buy a product? How many of you actually actively engage whenever you are buying anything as a consumer? What's your first priority? What exactly you pay attention to when you're buying something? Ingredients, cost.
See, we started the entire process by having loose commodities being sold in the market. That was the beginning of selling of goods. So many soaps and other things that are essential products came without being packed. But because of the different laws and regulations that are around us, the entire system of packaging and labeling has evolved. Even groceries were available unpacked. Now if you go to a supermarket or if you go to any kind of good grocery store, they are packed because there are some standards which are required for packaging and labeling. So when you buy loose products, you can be sure that there is a possibility of being cheated on that. But once you have something packaged, it falls under certain criteria of consumer guides. They need to pass a standardization process. There is some kind of grading. They have to fit into the branding and the labeling law, and so one can be assured that the kind of risk involved in buying packaged products which have a neat label would be less as compared to something which is available loose.
What is FDA? Has anyone heard of FDA? What is the full form of FDA? It's Food Drug Administration. Okay, so you have an FDA commissioner of every city, every state. So there is a complete set of people who look at this regulation. So the FDA commissioner's purview starts from what is sold loose in the market to something which is packaged to even something which is sold as a street food, something which is sold as a liquor, something which is sold in the restaurant. So the entire purview is under that department. So they in turn have their inspectors which are deputed in different regions, and they keep monitoring things on a very regular basis. They have proper formats. They have audit forms for each category. Every category has a separate kind of audit. So they can give surprise checks, and like what ma'am said, if you find something is not appropriate, you must raise a voice. You must ask for redressal. So one of the authorities, I think now I'm sure if you go to FDA website, there would be, every organization has a connect icon. That means they want to connect with people. Yes. So there would be a helpline, there would be a number. They will prompt you to put in your grievance or concern. Similarly, how many of you know what is FSSAI? Food Standard Safety Authority of India. Okay? So now all the acts which we had earlier have come together in under one roof, which is called FSSAI. So FSSAI would address every, obviously it's related more to food, but they have again a hierarchy of people. They have scientific bodies, they have scientific panels, and for each commodity, like there would be a scientific panel for just fruits and vegetables, or for spices, or for milk and milk products. There is a scientific panel which looks at claims, advertising. So for food fortification. So when we sit on these panels, minutest detail is brought to your notice, and that's where the organization, like what she very rightly said today, the organization want to make money, right? So they try to highlight what suits them, but as a consumer we are looking at the things which mean a lot to the consumer, so far as their health is concerned, need to be highlighted. So today we are looking at high fat, salt, sugar foods. So most of the companies would not like to highlight the high fat or the salt content in the food, but they would like to give additional freebies, or they would like to highlight things which capture the consumer's attention, and the consumer is not even in a position to understand that something which is in the minor form.
The hidden message is always the most important message. I've always told you that some things which are in the smallest font is the most important part of your label. So this happens with a lot of insurance companies also. The hidden messages are the smaller fonts are always the most important things. And when you hear that a license is cancelled, okay, they may just showcase something else, but the entire thing is a quality check which can lead to a cancellation of a license. So that is how these agencies are so important.
Yeah. Now it's becoming more and more stronger in India because it's getting more organized. So congratulations. I think you should show your book to everybody.
So this is the book. Thank you so much for your time and patient hearing, and like I said, let us get the old era again. Please visit the library, read books, because there is no replacement, however material is available on the screen. But the kind of satisfaction that you get when you hold a book and when you read it, I'm sure once you start doing it, you will realize that yes, there is nothing that can compensate that kind of feeling. And believe me, girls, any reading which is meaningful will never go waste. It will add on to your data, and you will, be able to apply it sometime in your lifetime. So thank you so much.
I think we can have one photograph together with the students.
Good afternoon, students, teachers, and non-teaching staff. On behalf of IQAC and Library Committee, I am here to propose the vote of thanks. First and foremost, I would like to thank Mrs. Hemani Malhotra for accepting our invitation and delivering a thoughtful lecture on consumer studies. I would like to also thank our Honorable Principal Dr. Jagdeep Madan to grace the occasion. Then all the IQAC committee members and library committee members who had worked wholeheartedly for the event, and specifically Mr. Elton Pitbro, who arranged for publicity, technical support, and feature uploading on YouTube. So I thank you all and announce that the program is over now.
So thank you students for coming to the library.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I think I have, anyway, I again thank the student for gracing the occasion and asking the meaningful questions. Thank you all. Just